There are many people in the Bitcoin media who will never talk about this or what you just said. Some people want Bitcoiners to be as quiet as possible while Larry Fink and others like him change Bitcoin into what they want it to be. They have spent a lot of money and time trying to make the media talk about Bitcoin in the same way. This is because they want Bitcoiners to be as quiet as possible while Fink and others like him change Bitcoin into what they want it to be. Whitney Webb, a well-known investigative reporter, and Mark Goodwin, editor-in-chief of Bitcoin magazine, recently talked to TFTC about how important it is to strongly support and promote all of Bitcoin's core principles and the main reason it was created in the first place: to free people from the oppressive traditional banking system. Whitney says that many people, including well-known Bitcoin supporters, are leading Bitcoiners astray by making them believe that BlackRock and other Wall Street players are good for this space. There's a chance that we were too focused on the numbers game to protect what was most important. In addition, Whitney thinks that terrible things will happen if we let this keep going. Self-reliance should really be the main idea behind the answer, because I don't think it's enough to expect people in the private sector to solve the problem for you because they don't like ESG. It's also important to remember that what happens in this public-private play, just look at this, the Office of the Finance Secretary alone. In this case, too, it was Robert Rubin and Goldman Sachs. He works to get rid of Glass-Steagall. When that boom bursts in 2008, Henry Paulson of Goldman Sachs is named Treasury of the Secretary. Then there's Tim Geithner, who worked for Larry Summers, and Robert Rubin, who is Secretary of the Treasury under Obama. Then there's Steve Mnuchin, who was involved in the financial disaster of 2008 and whose dad was a top executive at Goldman Sachs. In other words, when they're in charge, they make rules that help themselves. They worked for Goldman Sachs and came to put in place policies that would help Goldman Sachs, right? Usually when the private sector wants something, they make a big market for it. People have spent a lot of money making something like the carbon market, but no one is using it. After that, they will use the government to make people use the carbon market. So they're trying to do that with the help of climate emergency, right? That's not going to work. What are they going to do if that doesn't work? Well, they're trying to do it, as Mark and I have talked about before, the way of the private industry. Okay, so you don't want money that can be programmed and watched if it comes from the central bank. If it comes from a private bank, then you might, right? Things are different in places like Argentina right now, though, where people have lost a lot of their buying power. That is, I think the poverty rate was really high before Milei took power. I believe it was around 60%. Then Milei took over and lowered the value of the currency by half. This made it even harder for people in Argentina to buy things. At this point, Argentinians are so desperate that they are being told they are doing WorldCoin while they go through shock therapy, created by a JP Morgan guy. They are looking through the Sam Altman orb for shitcoins and a cow tag, which is a digital ID. So the idea is that you can use that as your internet connection and use these tokens and stable coins like Tether or USDC or anything else that is accepted by Mercado Pago, the big company that runs Mercado Libre and is also connected to Mercado Bitcoin, Brazil's biggest cryptocurrency exchange. And then there's Ripio, which works with all of these guys as well. They are going to be in charge of all the rails that things run on. People are running there because their money has lost so much value and they have nowhere else to go. In the end, I think the goal is to get people on trackable, controlled money by any means necessary. If you're not going to do it because you're thinking, oh yeah, this is how I'm going to use JP Morgan coin and beat the Fed CBDC, then don't. If you're not going to fall for that, it looks like they'll use chaos and desperation to get people to join the systems they're making. They're not going to build these tools for billions of dollars and then no one will use them. Either measures in the public or private sector will make people desperate and they will try to use that against you. After that, it was kind of like 2008. Oh, look, the private banks have ruined the economy right now. The public sector needs to step in and rein them in, even though Obama's cabinet was picked by Citigroup to do just that, right? They are the ones who will step in and pull these things in. These are the policies and changes that need to be made, but the bankers wrote them. They say that Whitney and Mark have been working on a plan to make Americans accept steady coins and digital tokens that are controlled by banks. They wrote an extremely helpful article together that was published on Bitcoin magazine earlier this year. In it, they talked about how Fluent Finance, a company that used to work with Farmington State Bank, a small rural bank that was involved in the FTX collapse scandal, and has since been building CBDC rails for countries in the Middle East and Africa, is now working with some American banks to create a joint US-dollar stable coin. When she talks to TF, Whitney warns that Bitcoin is the only thing that can save us from this evil, but it can't if we let it be taken over. Here are some more interview clips. They're probably going to set us up for something like that, where they try to make current money useless. If you want your money to be worth something and keep some of its purchasing power, you have to use financial products X, Y, and Z. All of them will be programmable and able to talk to each other, if not within the private sector, then within the public sector. Wallets and digital ID systems that look like they're from different companies will actually all be the same in that they can all send all of their data to a single global database. That's the main point of this plan. How are we going to fight that? Don't use the database, the digital wallet, the digital ID, or the system itself. I think Bitcoin is a big part of their plans, but they need Bitcoin to stay as a method for storing assets, as Larry Fink said. As for Jeffrey Epstein's talk about Bitcoin, I didn't know about it until we started looking into this a couple of months ago. They don't want it to be a currency. Oh yes, and he says the same thing that Fink does. The second part will be fun. In reality, it's not money, it's a way to store things. Really, if Bitcoin stays in that box, people like Larry Fink, Jeffrey Epstein, and maybe even Larry Summers, who was on the Zappos advisory board, want Bitcoin to be a certain thing so they can use it. Some people in the space, like this RSK guy, say Bitcoin should stop being so revolutionary. It needs to stop doing that and start helping Wall Street. I believe it is clear what needs to be done to stop those plans that would make the opposite happen. There are many people in the Bitcoin media space who will never talk about this or what you just said. I think a big reason for this is that a lot of money and time has been put into making the Bitcoin media discourse as uniform as possible because they want Bitcoiners to be as obedient as possible while Larry Fink and his ilk do what they want with Bitcoin and make it what they want it to be. They want people to be happy with number grow up and sort of the Sailor-esque talking points that have gotten a lot of attention, compared to what you just said, for example. As Diego from Rootstock said, there needs to be a cultural shift in Bitcoin that goes against what he said. He said that we need to drop the idea that banks and central banks are fiscally irresponsible and instead question and threaten their power. If we want to get rich, we need to give that up. The way they think is like that, and I don't think the way sailors think is that different. They are pushing people in the wrong direction, and if we go in that direction, they will push people in that direction who want to drop the idea behind Bitcoin and just use it as a tool for Wall Street. Seriously, if we let that happen, very bad things will happen, so we need to fight it. In fact, there is a specific effort underway against Bitcoin holders to try and get them to follow the rules in this way, and that's done by controlling the conversation in the media. The people who use Bitcoin should want to go back to the original ideas, not the other way around. That needs to be fought for. That needs to be important again. That's all the important crypto news for today. Stay tuned for more news, analysis, and views from the world of cryptocurrencies. Tell us what you think in the space below. Please like this movie and subscribe to our channel to see more fun videos.